Hey, this blog and video is about indoor gardening for beginners, not beginners. How to grow your houseplants and more. And this is a picture of our townhouse where we moved last year and we moved to a farm, but where we were growing, we would grow a lot of our plants indoors. And this is how we grew them in the front on our of south-facing windows and sunniest areas of our garden. So we've always been intrigued by this topic, and people have always asked us, they only live in an apartment, how can they grow food in a small space? Well, in this article, we explore indoor gardening essentials, such as your space, indeed, the soil that you need, water, and the sun that's necessary to grow indoors, as well as choices for you. So, did you know you could grow fruit trees or even vegetables? What vegetables could those be? And other edibles that you may not have considered. So, watch out till the end of this video to learn all that. But first, what would you need in order to grow? What exactly? How much space? Before we go into that, space. I mean, speaking about space, NASA, one in the 80s and 90s, did a lot of research on, did some research on um, purifying the air inside the cabins because they noted that there was a lot of what they later on termed VOCs or volatile organic compounds in the construction, not only of their hubs or their the ISS, but also of the indoor homes that we live in. So the average home today has maybe as much as 10 times more polluted indoors than it is outdoors. And so um, as I mentioned in this blog, we have, if you have at least as much space as astronauts do, then you can grow these air cleaning houseplants. A lot of plants that we think of as just like houseplants are actually really helpful in purifying the air of VOCs. So here are some to consider: rubber plant, English ivy dracena, which I actually have in my office here. I don't know if you saw that. Peace lily, spider plant, aloe vera, Boston fern, snake plant, one of the best, bamboo. And so I've listed all of these different indoor houseplants here, Chinese evergreen, and their Latin names, so you make sure that you are buying the right thing if you are you purchasing or acquiring the right plant. Um, Janet Craig Varnecki, Florist's chrysanthemum, Barberton daisy, weeping fig, cornstalk dracena, red-edged dracena, bamboo palm, Chinese evergreen, and the snake plant. So if growing plants indoors can be good for our health, how can we ensure that they survive indoors? So first you have the space, second you have the sun. That's shining on my face right now. Sunlight is one of those main issues to troubleshoot when growing indoors because many homes don't allow for enough sunlight, and most plants need a lot of sun, especially the ones that we love to grow. Not the house plants. Those house plants, I mean, not those air purifying plants that I mentioned. They're low light requirements, honestly. But if you do grow later on vegetables and fruit trees, you want to get them, you want to make sure herbs that they do have nice sun light. And so you put them in the south facing window, or there are some handy phone apps like Sun Surveyor, Sun Calc that you can use to determine how many hours of light you have in your specific window. You can also sort of bring the light from the outdoors indoors. There's some ways to do that. This was a parabolic mirror on an Indiegogo campaign, for instance. And there is something called a solar tube here that you can bring in the light, or having sun rooms, right? And grow lights. So here's another question we get asked a lot: is what kind of grow lights do I purchase? Well, you get what you pay for. You can do LED lights, but they don't have the full spectrum, and we've had hit or miss with LED lights, so we just go with this particular brand, Mars Hydro, and we're not affiliated with them. It's just the brand that we use, and there are more intense ones and lighter ones. So take a look and see which one is something that you'd like to use. And the third essential for gardening indoors is water. Most modern houses in America are A, not breathable houses, which is a concept that's more European, where in Germany you have this concept of Luftwaffe, where you open the windows in the middle of the day, and you let the air come in fresh, as cold as it is. Or you also you have these air vents, and you don't necessarily always have air conditioning. So we in America have very dry homes because of the forced air, and because of that, you have to constantly water. There are some plant monitoring and watering systems that you can hook up. So here's an example of, if you look at fritzing, if you're somebody who wants to DIY it, this is something you can build on your own. But apart from that, another easy way to do it is just to buy, and now these things are very common, self-watering planter. Just Google self-watering planter and you'll be able to find one. This particular plant, unfortunately, is not a self-watering planter, and it's too small for this big basil. But I'm so grateful that it was shared by my friend Lori. Here's the self-watering design. It has a reservoir for the water to sort of pool there until it's used up by the plant. And so even if you miss a few days or miss a week, you can still catch up, because as long as the reservoir is there. Now, lots of different schools of thought on this, and one would be you may be harboring bacteria more than 12 hours. Indeed. But as long as your plant's not dying, then you know it's not waterlogged and it's using up all that water. Fourth essential is soil. So just as water is crucial for your plants, so is the right kind of soil. So most of the soil recipes that are um, recommended on the basis that regular soils become either dried out or too moist indoors. So unfortunately, when you use things like peat moss, they're not sustainable, and um, often they cost quite a lot. So we in permaculture, we design um, with nature. And so we use what we have. So if we have soil that is we can dig up in the garden, we use that soil. But we try to enhance it with maybe a addition of mycorrhizal fungi, more on that in other blogs, or worm castings, which we also have in our home. We have not in our home, but we raise worms. So we have vermicomposting worms that really are helpful to create the fertile soil that we want. So read more about the overabundance of fungi in your indoor soils. Might lead to excess spores. So some and breathing problems. So you also want to look for a balance of fungi and bacteria and beneficial bacteria. So as long as you have beneficial bacteria in your soil in the form of worm castings or compost, this will outnumber the bad bacteria. And what happens is if you have healthy soil that's teeming with life, you also inevitably will get gnats and fruit flies. And so there is this balance. The dead soil that you buy in the store coming from a bag that's been pasteurized almost, basically, will probably work as a substrate to carry water for plants that don't need much nutrition. But if you're growing vegetables and fruit trees indoors, you probably will want to have more fertile soil that has more nutrition, and that nutrition comes in the form of compost. Believe it or not, when my kids were young, we would also potty train them in the potted plants. We'd have a potted plant beside the toilet. They would potty train, and they would also wee on the potted plant, and that way we would get nitrogen, which as gross as this seems, and I still am trying to find a way to make this process of using urine in a humanly dignified way. I'm trying to see how can we do this in a humanly dignified way, because that urine is so rich in nitrogen fertilization, and some people swear that they have grown bananas that fruited indoors in this climate, which we are in a zone 7B in Northern Virginia. Um, because of urine. So we have not tried it, but we did have potting in our a pot in our bathroom as our kids were growing up. So here's some examples of my fruit trees inside the home. This is an indoor calamansi, and in fact, this big tree here was once this small potted tree there. So just to give you an idea that they do grow, and you'll have to repot them throughout the years. Indoor fruit trees to consider: dwarf bananas. Here's an example of something that we grew and eventually became our Christmas tree one year. Citrus, like I mentioned, this is a calamansi, a lemon, Philippine lemon tree, calamandori, some people call it. Fig tree, which is fruiting for us indoors in this picture in the wintertime. Indoor vegetables to grow indoors. Peas. Look for smaller varieties of peas, such as Tom Thumb, Little Marble, Blue Bantam, Dwarf. Tomatoes and peppers that are small. Leafy greens. Leafy greens are not are great. Lettuce, spinach are great sources of nutrition inside in the summer and in the winter months especially. So this is in an aero garden, for instance. Tiny cucumbers like this bait alpha are great sources, are great indoor foods that you could consider, vegetables that you can consider growing indoors. Other things that you may or may not have considered: some people start growing with herbs, especially beginner gardeners. This is hit or miss. Sometimes herbs work as an introduction to gardening, and sometimes they fail. So they were my introduction to gardening, and my basil died, and that just deflated my confidence from the get-go. But here I am growing bay leaf, bay leaf and cilantro by a sunny window. And then what we do suggest people start off with is microgreens. Microgreens are any legume seed, even any wheatgrass, right? Any of those seeds that you have in your pantry that are beans and you'd like to sprout them, go try to grow them. We have them here on a 1020 tray. In fact, our family business is growing microgreens for restaurants and cafes. And this is when we were still growing it, we're growing it for ourselves. This is how we would normally eat it: just harvest it, put it on the middle of the kitchen table, and harvest as you go so that people see it and it's part of your diet, your breakfast, lunch, and dinner throughout the day. And that is so nutritious for you, sometimes as 40% more nutritious in its baby form than its full grown form. And so, yeah, we're big proponents of microgreens. You can easily produce 20 to 25 pounds of these microgreens or sprouts a year. Mushrooms. Growing mushrooms indoors is an ideal choice for anyone wanting to grow food in a small or even dark indoor space. Most mushroom varieties prefer little or no direct sunlight. This is an example of pink oyster mushrooms. Mushrooms are very pricey in the store, but if you purchase a kit even and grow it on your own, you can harvest several flushes of these mushrooms week after week. So here are some sources that we source from. We're not affiliated with them, but we want to get you growing. So definitely check. These are the ones that we use, and so we definitely know they work for us. So finally, dig deeper. Once you have your thing growing, and then your fruit trees growing and getting bigger, how do you transplant them? So this is a video. We also have a video of us transplanting our banana and bringing it indoors. But here's a video of how to just do it from ground to pot, making sure to keep as much of the original soil in the new pot as you can. And so what are you waiting for? If you are new to growing, begin by growing something indoors. If it is cold outside, if you are not new to growing, it's cold outside, indoor gardening is the way to grow. You can still grow indoors. We hope this article has made it a whole lot easier, and this video has made it a whole lot easier for you to get started with indoor growing. And if you are interested in learning more, check out our latest workshop where where we could really guide you more personally, one-time thing in an in-person or live stream workshop. We are here for you, and I hope that from here on we will send us your pictures of what it is you are growing indoors. Um, we are very excited for you and your gardening journey, and we hope to hear from you and what this has inspired soon.